Okay, so here I am filming a follow-up video to the last video. Um, I know that you guys asked to provide some explanation or a notebook going through sort of how I got to the things because the last video was just a demo of what I made. So I'm just going to be running through the code, hopefully not too long. It's um, only like 500 lines, really. I mean, on the main function it is. So the first part here, we pull up here. The first part here is just the UI stuff, which I know is not interesting. This is just all written in like the app designer for MATLAB, which is really easy to do. Literally just creating all of these switches and then the label and then where the switch is located on the thing and you know really I mean the really all it's here for is to call this one function. When the button is pushed, we just call start up the app. And so the thing is that I was sort of being a little bit cheeky with this because on the email here it says that um, you know uh, to provide an algorithm, but prefer to provide one function, provide a function or a class that outputs this stuff. And so the entire thing is actually just built inside of a single function, which is a little bit jank, but it works for this, and I was just trying to get it done and not be super efficient about it. So anyways, all this stuff is here. It generates our lovely little GUI here, which loves to appear on the second page right here. And but really what it's doing is it's going through and we're calling the thing called spread out calculator 2, and then with a ton of different variables all put in from those GUI elements. And so we call that function here. Should we go? And we come into here. And so I actually overwrite some of the variables inside of the GUI. So some of those are here, just some lag variables, base spread, all that type of stuff here. And then you'll also notice one of the things is I already wrote some of these other scripts here are just literally to process the .json files. Unfortunately, MATLAB does not really deal with JSON files. And on top of that, I've never really used JSON files for anything. I'm a trader, not a programmer. So like I don't even really have experience with that. So a lot of code that I wrote was literally just parsing that into other documents and sort of reformatting it so it's accessible. So a lot of that code is missing from here. But in general here, we start out, we just set these things up, the user date and so forth, a user date that's inputted here. We're just here reading some file names, reading our trades organized here, and the trades organized looks something like this. It just took you guys' trades, and I did this here, with the time, price, and sell into easily accessible. Well, we're loading them into here, into this set of trades organized folder, and then we're making our ask pre-order book. All the order books are named the ask order book, and that's because I initially had a separate one for the bid and the ask, and I realized it was inefficient to just be double processing. So that. Then we're just adding some nice labels to things. There's a lot of just things that are commented out or explanations. Basically, what we're trying to do. The reason that we're taking all this like user time. Oh wait, I'm on the wrong one. That's the old calculator, the new one. But basically, we're taking our time here and dividing by 24 because we're essentially at some point we change all of the like the times that are outputted by JSON, this type of format here, into just a number that represents the amount of days that have elapsed since essentially Jesus was born, since the day 00000. Just because MATLAB doesn't have a way of easily like comparing dates to find the easiest, like the closest date on a column or time. So like that's a pain in the ass. But anyways, we do all that stuff. Deal with that. A lot of this just counting. You can see here just like a lot of cleanup. We're just like splitting things by commas. Here we're trying to find the closest essentially time that the user has inputted that on the order book, because obviously the user's not going to input, like, if they put in any exact time, it's only taking order book measurements every, like, it's only so certain amount, like every few, multiple times a second, but it might not be on the exact second, so we can't reference that. So we just like do a minimum thing, like where we subtract the order book, the from itself, and then we look at like the minimum index that equals to get basically, oh, okay, where's the approximate point that they picked in to the code. Yeah, we do all this cleanup here, set up a couple tables here, and this here is literally all just like organizing things into cleaned order books that are easy. So make it easy to process. So if I'm looking here, I don't know if you can see my mouse. It might be hidden. Should be somewhere here. Ask pre-order book clean. Here's just the ask order book, and we get this. And then this, what we're essentially doing is we're just putting this value in the second column and then moving everything up. Because that's a result of essentially all of these like splitting up of things. I know we're not in the logic. This is like the boring processing stuff, the stuff that like takes 80% of doing this. And then we get to our first sort of stuff here. Up down is essentially the variable that represents like whether or not we need to adjust our spread to get more or less on the ask or bid side, so we can, because we want to target this coin target, and so like it's just the one or -1, and that's, yeah, it could be a true or false boolean. I just made this fast. It should be a boolean, but it's not. And then we basically do that equation that I've laid out in this picture here. That's that right here. And because the equation can work either way, it's not going to work on both sides, or rather, I didn't want to make that. I just do a simple else if to find out, okay, so our skew factor, which is determined by this equation, right, by looking at effectively like getting the bid and then the ask skew factor, essentially like 2 minus, because remember our maximum is 2, and then obviously there's another if statement that checks at the bottom, like, okay, like is the skew factor greater than 2, then we obviously need to set it back to 2, because we are trying to maintain a constant amount of order on the order books. We're checking to see if the skew is on in the first place, skew is on in the first place, which is one of those buttons or knobs that we put in as part of a function of the GUI. This is for putting things to the debugging, so just sort of useless stuff. And then we're basically going in here, we're calculating our average from the like exponential moving whole here. This is actually one, like, I wrote everything from scratch except for basically this, which I got downloaded on the internet, which is just so I can calculate the whole function, the whole moving average. Put that into that table there. We're setting up our plot, so we can plot on the chart here, and then the R represents like red. So plotting the prices against the time. Then we basically calculate the SMA here, so the simple moving average, and then we are, here's where we're putting the whole, this is where we're calling it here, and then this is just all plotting to plot everything on top of the chart and make sure one is blue and one is green, and then, one is red. And then we're basically turning the user time back into a format, into like one of these workable formats, so that because the user time at some point we changed it earlier into a number, like an ISO number, so that we can compare it against the other tables. We're just turning it back here to like the regular format, so that I can plot our user time on that. On the actual graph, so we could see obviously where the user picked. Blah 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 blah. We put our midline there. We put our line there for the user where the user is picked, and then we have we delete all the junk lines here, which is basically this thing here. Where or was it the ask pre-order book clean? We're just taking this here and we are turning it into, I believe this would be the, this would be, where is it? Like this, you know, where it becomes sort of, we're just spacing them every other, so we get like a 1 by 100. So just cleaning all of that up, making another sort of array here or whatever. And then we're looking at we're doing some more minimum index to reference where we are on the different order books. And then we're trying to determine the direction. And then we have our offset here, and that offset is from the bid offset. It's fixed in this instance. And then essentially we're basically figuring out, okay, based on the direction that we need to go in, up or down, we'll just sort of spaghetti code our way into making the offset negative or positive for the bid or ask side. Once again, like, please excuse the spaghetti-ness of the code and the tons of ifs and elses. I didn't try to make this efficient. I just wanted to make something that worked, given the time period. So I hope you understand. We plot our midpoint on that, and then more of these tables. This is like for the bid orders and ask part orders. That's where we set them up. So you can see this, like here is what the tables look like. They're basically pretty simple to store all of our variables. And then here's our multipliers. You can see here I was playing with other multipliers here that are also fib. And I thought about maybe like having different settings, but I just wanted to go with these. I mean, having your 7th order be 4 times the initial order on a spread that's like, I don't know, it'd be like about 7% away from the midpoint, I think is as far as they get out, is already quite a lot. I mean, you normally do that a bit more gradually. Well, depending on what you're doing. Our base volume, I don't know what coin this is, but 10,000 seemed to give us orders that were pretty good, and that let us sort of dominate the order book a little bit, and sort of, because of, yeah. We're storing all of this stuff here. All of this is written out as line by line because of it. I was trying to debug something that didn't work, and I was like, oh, well, I'll do it line by line. But basically, this is just trying to get our spread, and then set, each of our, this is like we're just doing like a while loop to set essentially where our spreads are and how far out, and then writing that to there. These are just different bid skew factors. Once again, this is a lot of debug code that I was writing that would display different things so I could know what was going wrong when I was debugging things. And then the same thing, we're just basically writing the same literal script up here, but for the bid orders. And that's just, once again, all we're doing here is we're just figuring out that multiplier to apply to those existing orders in the order book and then setting them into where they need to go, as well as the amount of volume on each order that needs to be specified. This is all of this here is called the Wombo combo, because I was having a lot of trouble with the way that I was graphing things, and the way that MATLab's handles stuff. Like I was trying to, like if you plot bar charts, like if you want to have like bar charts that are like, I want to plot multiple, like it's easy to stack multiple plots on like a line chart because, they'll easily just stack on top of each other if they're scaled to the same values. But the bar charts, the bar width, like the width of the bars is dependent on the relative amount of bars that exist within the scene from the beginning to the end. And so if I was, for the bid and the ask side, because it was both plotting about 100 orders on each side, just the visually, like that was fine because they were all going to be the same scale. Because I was only plotting like 14, the bars were 14 times wider, or not 14 times, whatever 100 divided by 14 times wider than those, and it looked really silly and funky. And so I had to basically just combine everything into one giant like table, and then I had to basically tell that table, like to specify on that table which ones are which color, which was really frustrating to have to figure this out. It took a while, but we were able to paint them different colors, so it all looks very pretty. And then we we have like a cumulative, so the cum stands for like the cumulative sum of all the orders. We can have that like nicely pretty and print out. So overall, like really the meat and bread and butter of the risk management is very small, but it's really all we need, which is essentially, um, where is it? Like all this is just setting up. Is really just looking at these skew factors. This is equation is the underpinning of the thing. And then really like this simple comparative function that's looking at some point down here at, you know, I don't know where it is, but because I wrote this all in one function, but it's somewhere in here. But looking like at, you know, that those two averages, which one is above the other one, and then setting an offset based off of that. And so yeah, like long story short, I with my experience in market making, that is the thing I have always understood is the fundamental thing you need to manage with risk, which is not even necessarily the volatility of the underlying thing that you're trading. Well, that is super important, but it's always going to come down to how much inventory you have at any given time. You always want to have inventory to capitalize on great moments, but you don't want to get strung out to one side or the other, and then you become a bag holder effectively. And then you basically become at the mercy of the market. It's like I always try to stick to that target percent, you know, wherever that might be, try to be on top of it, try to predict where the market will be, and already target sort of holding that percentage of coins and backwards and forwards, because ultimately you want to make money if things are going up and you want to make money if things are going down. So that's basically the code that I wrote here in the function. Yeah, there's a lot, but there's also not that much. Yeah, and then the last note, I'm like I learned programming to modify open source like trading bots that I was using already. Um, so I'm sort of a backwards way of going at it instead of doing programming and then becoming a trader. So like yeah. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. That's a little bit of explanation of like what's going on.